back. Wealth Unscripted by Mo. And today's giving a masterclass. Today's giving a masterclass because I was looking through the notes that I set out, and there's so many like point form things that I want to make sure that we hit today. So first of all, please listen to the entire episode. And if you're not liking, subscribing, and just all the things that need to be done on whatever platform you love to get this information, please do that. So especially for this episode, because if you really do that for this episode, then I'll know that, okay, this is the kind of content you want, much more than the, more higher theory kind of stuff. Okay, so this episode is titled Congratulations, You Played Yourself. And the reason for that is because, again, I talk to a lot of people right across the board, not just my own clients, but in speaking to mortgage agents, for people, that they're working with through other realtors, my own friends invest in real estate as well. And people really, really play themselves. Like, it's really saddening because the consequence of playing yourself is not just, oh, I lost 100K, or, oh, I should have bought this unit, right? Sometimes it's really that the generational wealth that you're after, you reverse it. And the story I'm going to start with is actually quite mind-boggling. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that it actually gave me sleepless nights, because there was also like a loss in the family, which I guess kind of snowballed the entire thing. So you're just thinking that this person died, right? Thinking that they had set up the family and the generations to come with an asset that they can carry on, only for them to be turning in their graves, right? Because the family in such a short period of time has squandered the wealth that I'm sure they worked so hard for, because they're from those communities that don't believe in debt, right? And from that generation, especially, they don't believe in debt. So imagine doing all of that, and then in less than 3 years after your death, property's gone, right? So it's not a light thing at all, but anyway, so let's get into the story. So mortgage agent friend of mine was telling me actually two stories about families that, right, so the grandma died, and then there were two of her, I guess, grandchildren living in the property, and they had enough to qualify for a mortgage, but they couldn't just get their acts together, right? Didn't want to pay off like this one little piece of debt. Didn't want to like, oh, who cares about this house? It's an old house anyway, let's get rid of it. Right? They lost the point that the lot of land that it was sitting on and the location it was at was so invaluable that just working together to get a mortgage for this property, right? Grandmother already, got rid of the mortgage, she paid it off, but they probably needed to pay a little bit of equity and things like that. So get a mortgage for the balance, just to do that. Right? And they qualified. So it wasn't like, oh, how is it going to happen? No, they qualified and they still didn't do it. And so it was really disheartening, because then at the end of the day, exactly like what this woman had been working for, it was gone. It was just gone. And so that's one story. Another story that I heard, this one was truly wild as well, was there was a family that bought a house in Brampton before Brampton's what it is right now. And it was basically like a nine-bedroom house. Like, this house was so large. 9-bedroom house, maybe like 15 years ago, whatever it is. And every time, so they sold the property, and then they would take the bulk, again, because they didn't want to take a mortgage. They would take the bulk of what they got for, the money they got from the property, and put it in a smaller house. So because again, property prices are increasing over time, right? So what the money they got from the 9-bedroom house, they ended up putting it only the equivalent of like a 5-bedroom house, because property prices increased that drastically. Take it from that 5-bedroom house, which they sold, and they were selling so fast. Like every 2 years they were leaving, and it's like, why? Oh, their realtor told them, you can get this much out of it. Okay, you get this much cash out of it, and then what did you do with it? Because again, they were afraid to get a mortgage, bought an even smaller property. Long story short, they literally reversed the point of equity. They reversed wealth and ended up at basically an apartment. They own an apartment from 15 years. And I know it sounds wild, because it almost sounds like, how is this even possible? But this is it. If you are so focused on, I'm not taking any debt, I'm not doing a mortgage, my realtor said it's better to do this. They put me in a more expensive product, right? In a more expensive mortgage product. because you don't have the proper professionals around you. You can't ask questions. I know people who are literally afraid to ask their realtors and mortgage agents questions. I can never understand that, because with my own clients, they stop asking me questions all day long, even when they shouldn't be asking me questions, right? So, so it's just, it's really sad. It's really sad. And yeah, don't do that. Don't play yourself that way, because how are they going to work back now? Because think about it, like, it's so much harder now to get a mortgage. Interest rates have increased. Now you need a higher down payment. They're no longer first-time home buyers because they were selling properties so frequently. Like, they were eroding wealth in so many different ways. And I don't know why nobody told them. I don't know why nobody told them.
And I think two things come to mind when you talk about these stories, right?
Yeah.
One is the sort of like myths and misconceptions with real estate. One being that, like maybe once you've owned, you can sell and use the equity, and like it doesn't matter where you move into, it'll just be fine kind of thing. I think that's one myth. And then also, it sucks that they were getting that advice from their realtor and no one could really properly advise them when to make the moves and what moves to make. Like, that's really sad.
Yeah, and that happens a lot more often than not. And I know that, and honestly, no shade to family members, but it's always that realtor that, my grandma used this realtor forever. Mm-hmm. They're basically like an uncle now. Or they are an uncle, right? Like, it's my mother's sister's something husband. Like, these are the things, that put you in trouble, right? Like, you're making serious money-based, decisions, and you're just saying, well, this person has been in the family for that long, therefore I can't question them. Mm-hmm. No, that's like, no, absolutely not. Never. Question everything and everyone at all times. Always. Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, so with these stories, we're going to try and, get some lessons and stuff out of this and see if we can sort of like talk about some myths and misconceptions in real estate. Mm-hmm. And some of these have been at the top of my mind, okay? Mm-hmm. So the first is, condo as your first property. Mm-hmm. Are you with it or no? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a hard segue, actually, from the story. Let me recalibrate my mind. No, and I 100% believe that condo is a great first property. Matter of fact, a great second property, a great third property. I am team condo all day long.
Interesting.
Honestly, 100%.
So the reason I started with this one is because you just told a story where they went from a 9-bedroom house and ended up at an apartment, which I'm going to assume is a condo apartment.
Yeah.
And I guess you said they worked back from wealth, but you're saying a condo is still a first, second, or third, or fourth.
Yes.
So explain the differences then.
So and that's a great catch. So this was number one in the land, the fact that they owned the land.
Okay.
Right?
I see.
And they reversed from owning land that you can then split up, subdivide, do whatever, right? Condo as a first to grow up, yes. But to say that you're starting at a freehold and then working backwards to something where you're just owning the unit and not the physical land, you've played yourself, right? Yeah. And that's not to say that you couldn't have repurposed that large house, right? So if I moved into a condo, okay, that's because on my own primary residence level, this is what I want. But that's not to say that I would take equity out of that house, of that land, for instance, buy my condo that I want, but I still own the land and I can turn it into other things, right? Like, as a family now, we can say we're going to partner with a smaller developer or somebody who's newer to the game, right, and wants to do apartment buildings, for instance. That would have been a beautiful partnership where you can still live in your condo apartment. That's up to you. Right. But then you have not taken away the option of this, land asset, which is key at all times, always.
Okay, here. So in that case, it was more an issue of you're owning land and now going to just owning a unit. So I understand that part.
In that particular example, but I think condos as properties for first-time home buyers there's this misconception that you can just go from renter to owner right away. Like, there's so many things around the idea of being an owner and you being the final last bus stop of any problem that happens with that house. Everything comes down to you, right? So when you're living in a condo, you have the condo corporation to some extent to sort of guide you through that process, right? There might still be some out-of-pocket expenses, but you have somebody who on a monthly basis is collecting money from you through your condo fee, which is a maintenance fee, right? They're collecting it and putting it in an account that is growing interest, so that if anything were to happen, that is the pot of money that they take from to fix your roof, to fix your this, to fix your that. If you just went straight from, renting a basement to owning a 4-bedroom house, number one, do you know what snow clearing is saying nowadays?
Yeah.
Snow clearing, cutting grass. I promise you, even things as silly as, I'm in a condo right now. I don't know what day my garbage is. Once there's garbage in my house, I take it to the chute.
Right.
I've lived in a house, okay? Couple different houses. And yeah, once you miss the garbage day, it just piles up in your garage. It's annoying. And in the summertime, that smell is stinky. Really stinky. And your neighbors will be giving you side eye, Mabel and them, who are just like, why didn't she cut her grass? Because I'm tired. I don't want to cut it today. You don't have to worry about all of those things, right? And so just moving immediately into a large house, especially on your own as a first-time home buyer. I have a first-time home buyer who qualified for like $1 million. He was like, I'm going to get this large house. Only him, by the way.
Wow.
I'm going to get this large house and we're going to rent out the basement and blah, blah, blah. Again, sure, smart money decision, but listen, once we now really broke down what it's going to take, just things that come down to you on a daily, monthly basis to make sure that you're managing. You can't even travel. You can't even travel.
You have to be.
And this is why people start to feel like, oh, owning a house ties me down. Owning that type of property or freehold will tie you down. Owning a condo likely will not, right? So these are the kinds of things where as a first-time home buyer, you're younger, you're just getting into it. You don't need all that smoke, man.
And this is something too, I think I changed my mind because the Nigerian in me was like, no, own land, own the house, have space, lots of space. Cause I'm still like, it's just crazy to me that I'm going to move into a place where like the bedroom is drastically smaller than the room in my father's house. Like I just cannot comprehend. But then when you now start to understand what you have, maintenance that is done for you, like you said, garbage and all these other things, it's like, okay, the pros and cons, like I think there are more pros and it makes sense to use a condo as like that transitional property to then test out if you actually can. Right. Because now I've actually been real with myself, like, okay, yeah, it would be nice to own, townhouse or full home or whatever. But I'm not coming out to be gardening on a regular basis. And you end up being that person on the street that everyone else is side eyeing, like, why is your lawn not looking manicured and prim and proper? And then it's November 13th, people are putting up Christmas trees light, and Christmas lighting. I'm not doing that shit. So I hear you. I absolutely hear that.
No, honestly, anyways, but yeah, so team condo all the way. And again,
That's
just
fair.
down to family size, like, I don't have a large family size, so like we don't need a very large house. So cleaning, Lord. Anyway, let's leave that. Hit me with the next one.
All right, the next myth and misconception. So, what are your thoughts on insurance premium on mortgages?
Insurance premium mortgages. I don't know why people are afraid of this thing.
First of all, what are they?
Okay, very good.
This is not something I'm too familiar with, too.
Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna explain it to you. So basically, if you're buying any property with less than 20% down, 20% down is the minimum, quote unquote minimum that lenders like, right? If you're buying anything with less than 20% down, then Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation has come in and said that they're going to insure that difference so that the lender, Scotiabank, BMO, all of them, will extend the mortgage to you. Because without CMHC coming in and saying, okay, this person is only going to put down 10%, we will insure that remaining 10% that the lender doesn't get from me, the buyer. CMHC is saying we will insure that difference. So that price, that difference, what comes to on a monthly basis, that is the insurance premium. So let's run through with my favorite example. I think I just put it in a reel, which is going to drop soon. So basically, $500,000 property, if you're buying it with $35,000, right? Versus, I guess the 100 or 110 if you were buying with 20% down, right? So we're looking at like 110K versus 35K. If you're buying it with the full 110K, which how long will it take you to save that? All of that stuff, okay? If you're buying with that, then your mortgage is around, right now at 5% because we all know where we're at. If you're buying it with that, you're looking at a mortgage of around $2,300, $2,400, right? Just rough numbers here. If you buy that same property with 35K, you're looking at about $2,800. So that's a $500 difference. That $500 difference is your insurance premium. And you're paying that at one time. It's all part of it. It's not like it's $2,800 and then something else on top of that. Right. That one number that the mortgage agent says this is your monthly, it's all wrapped up into that, right? So it's not a separate figure that you then have to like go and figure out how to contend with. So that's the first thing.
That makes sense.
So I know somebody has said $500 on a monthly basis. Oh my God, it's a lot. But here's the thing. Okay. How long would it have taken you to save from 35,000 to 100,000? Right? So now we're going to get into time value of money. How long would it have taken you for you to save? How many years? That's number one. Number two, if that was going to take forever and you're paying $500 a month, could you maybe see that as, you know what, I'm in this property now that's growing at 6% annually. What is your annual appreciation by owning that property today? How is that working in your favor? 6% annually on 500K. What's that? You know, let's whatever. do the math on your calculator and then compare that to the $500 a month that you're paying.
Right.
Is that expense that you're paying on top, is it worth the 6% annual appreciation? Right? So, you know, we like to talk about things in this way like hyper, oh my God, they're taking the money from me. The money was always going to leave you. It's just, why is it leaving you? The nature of money is for it to be spent, okay? Feel all right. Money is going to be spent. That's why money is here, right? I'm not telling you to be irresponsible, but then balance these things because I promise you, it would have taken you so long if you even got to 100K. Then you get to 100K and you call me, Mutiat, I'm ready to get pre-approved. Okay, cool. The property, that same 500K property you would have bought 4 years from now, where are the numbers at?
It's now 750 or
Thank
800.
you so much. And now what does it take you to buy that property?
Now you need 150.
If not more, depending on all your other mortgage factors, right? And guess what? Guess what the saddest thing would have been? Saddest thing would have been that you still now go back to CMHC to get an insured mortgage because you still can't come to 20%.
Right.
So you could have earned this, you could have bought the same property for the same less than 20% down when it was cheaper and enjoy that appreciation so that the property you're going to next, you can put more down.
Right. So that actually gets us to the last one, and you kind of touched on it, but we're going to get more into it now, is this, 5% versus 20% down payment on a house, or, is 20% that pinnacle that you need to have? Right. Because it's been like ingrained in my head, like, get your 20% down, get your 20% down, get your 20% down. And of course, we can talk about developers that offer projects where you don't need that. But I think a lot of people still are like, that's a lot of it, is that people are like, no, I need to have like 120 on hand to drop as a down payment. That's what's stopping me from being an owner. So
let's put it this way. So of course, we've gone through the example now. I personally never want you to put, it's going to sound so hypocritical. I ideally never want you to put less equity down, right? And that's because, it's not because of the insurance. I would rather you get into a property and have to pay that insurance than not get in at all, because there's a greater cost to that. But if you're the kind of person that you can put more down, right? Don't limit yourself to that 5. Try and put 10, right? And it's because the more you own, the better for you at all times, always. Yeah. Right? Like, what's the point of saying, yeah, technically I can put 10% down, but I'm only going to put 5 just because? In the end, you're not doing yourself any favors, because that extra 5% that you could have put down, I see it as you're putting it in a high interest earning opportunity, rather versus just putting it in, your savings account. Like, what are you really going to do with that money? Unless you're buying another property, then sure. Unless you're investing in something that's going to give you a higher return, sure. But for it to just be chilling there just because you're like, why? It doesn't make sense to me that on a property I'm going to put more than X dollars. No, you're playing yourself. Yep. Put it in this opportunity that can actually increase how much you earn, right? Like, it's for property. You're not throwing it away, right? So I always prefer people to put more down. It does not have to be 20%. Like I said, 20% is the number because the lenders don't ask you questions, right? Whether it's an A lender, a B lender, a C lender, whatever, right? Private lender. Once you have that 20%, you're good to go, right? Matter of fact, when you start to now, if you're having issues with a bank and you need to go to a B lender or a private lender, once you have that 20% down, you can get literally a mortgage in like 2 days. So because people were starting to have difficulty with other types of A lenders, that's why they started thinking, okay, cool, 20%. That's why you now started hearing it more and more often, because as A lenders started just becoming harder to give you a mortgage, people had to find all the alternatives, and those people wanted 20%. So that's why it became just like a regular part of our regular conversation around property.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, but we don't necessarily need it. Like, it's of course depends on each person's situation, but it's not hard 20%.
Yeah, it's not a hard 20%. Like, if your debt is crazy high, right? If your credit score is not wonderful, you're gonna need to either just buy it with cash or put, increasingly more down. So it's not so much as a factor of the down payment by itself. It's always also relative to the other factors of your mortgage eligibility.
Right.
A great time to remind you to just jump into my messages, to send me an email, connect with me however is necessary. You could even have it as a comment review, when you're listening to this, and say, I want to get pre-qualified. This is my, whatever, get in contact with me. I want to get pre-qualified, and I'll find a way to do that. But just reach out. Let's get you pre-qualified, even at the least, because I could even do like a quick triage and let you know this is probably where you fall, numbers wise. And then if we need to get deeper, then we're going to get, pre-approved and things like that. And I'll send you referrals. But this is where it just, again, comes down to your different factors of mortgage eligibility. How do all of that work in your favor, right? So.
And, added to that too, we talked about this on another episode, on a previous episode. So, go back and look at it. The one where we got into, policy, development, developers, all of that. There are some developers that do have projects where they sort of work with the bank and you don't necessarily need 20%. And I know like Daniel's Corp is a really good one for that. Yeah. So, listeners, you can check out Daniel's Corp and see what projects they have available. 100%. But do you know any other developers? I think I really am only aware of Daniel's.
I'm really only aware of Daniel's as well, because they have a specific like first-time home buyer.
Yes, they do a lot of that.
They do a lot of first-time home buyer projects. And the thing with Daniel's though is that you can buy with less than, actually, I'm going to backtrack. Daniel's will allow you to buy with less than 20% down as part of like a formal program that they have. Yeah. And they have it through an A lender, right? So it's kind of tied to each other, where you have to qualify for that A lender. Otherwise, you won't be able to get into it. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's true. That's the one caveat. The second caveat is a lot of developers, like when you look at your pre-construction feature sheet, right? They will tell you, you can start the project with only 10% down. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it might take a 4-year build. In the first 12 to 18 months, you have to put your 10% down according to their, deposit structure. Okay, cool. Now, when it now comes to closing the property, once they have transferred the property to you, or they're ready to transfer the property to you, when it comes to closing it, if you qualify at 10% down, through a mortgage agent, then you've bought a property with 10%. But if at the point of qualifying, you basically have to put 20% down, then you better have had that in mind and been saving towards an eventuality where you might have to put 20% down. Right. And you know what? I'm just going to talk about it, because this is a really, really big point as to why I'm working on a tech platform now, and it's specifically in pre-constructions. And the point of it is to help buyers in that prep phase. What kinds of projects should I be going for? What kinds of developers should I be focusing on? How do I even calculate? And actually, it's not calculate, because the platform will do that for you. It's more, how do I have that peace of mind to know that by the third or fourth payment, I am going to be able to make this payment? So there's a lot of financial planning that goes into pre-construction specifically, whether you're able to buy with 10% or, you have to go all the way to 20%. So yeah, let me know if you're interested in just working through that idea. Like, come in my DM or leave me again a comment, because my very first job, another story / segue, was in pre-constructions. And I spoke to so many people, honestly, in that 30-day period. And some of them had money, some of them didn't. But what was always clear, regardless of whether or not they had money, was the fact that they had to make a decision within literally a 2-day period was hectic. Yeah. Even though they had like $400K in the bank, they're like, oh my God, I'm not familiar. Is this good? Da, da, da. And I find that a lot of people that are able to buy pre-constructions fast is because they have realtors that have been working with them forever. Now, those kinds of realtors, they'll work with you because, you have money to spend. If you're not the kind of person that has access to that kind of realtor, or you're the kind of person that you don't want to have that hectic moment of like, big city realty has come to tell you, yeah, we have this project ready, join the wait list, blah, blah, blah. They're not coaching you through or helping you actually get to that decision point. So anyways, yeah, I just wanted to talk about that, let you know that that's coming down the pipeline, and let me know if you're interested. But pre-constructions definitely are a way forward. And we can definitely get into all that.
Well, good way to sort of close us out.
Yeah.
Closing costs in Toronto versus everywhere. Myths and misconceptions about this.
I see what you did there, and I enjoy it. Closing costs for closing the episode. Okay. So, in Toronto, you pay double the closing costs, and that's just the story. Like that, there's nothing more to say. So anywhere else outside the Toronto postal code, right? Everywhere else, you're just paying your municipal land transfer tax. That's it. In Toronto, you also pay a Toronto land transfer tax. And I can't tell you the reason why. I just know that that's the way it is. And that happens whether you're buying a resale, so property that already exists, or you're buying a pre-construction.
Okay, so talk about, closing costs, because I feel like a lot of times too, part of the reason I brought this up is a lot of people, we have our down payment, whether it's 20%, whatever amount will be, we have the down payment. We also have in mind the fees that we're going to pay, the realtors comes out of commission, but, like we think about the realtor, we think about maybe a lawyer that'll get involved to help us out. Well, a lot of those times, like the hidden costs or the closing costs, as you're signing things, like those are things that don't necessarily come to mind or are not factored in that like money that we're putting together.
Right. And I think that that's where, again, working with a professional who is not just about selling you the property comes into play. Like whenever there is no client, buyer or seller that I work with that we're not including even your moving costs as part of the table. So we literally work backwards from that answer and say, okay, if you have $100,000, we already know lawyer is 2.5. Take that away. Right. We already know moving costs in today's GTA Ontario. It's probably $2,000 if you're going to use a mover. Take that away, right? And then a good mortgage agent is also not going to pre-approve you for any property that you don't already have in your bank account 1 to 3% of that property's value, even outside of costs that you have already foreseen, right? And then, of course, land transfer tax is already included in just the numbers that you and I work through. So you might have 100K, but at the end of the day, you really only have 70K. We're not going to cross the 70K. Like, that's it. So I don't have a client that has gotten to that point of like, oh my God, in shock, right? Unless maybe they change lenders or something about their property process changes that has to do with the property, but it's never anything to do with like the planning and preparation in advance. Definitely not. And then if you're doing pre-construction, there's some additional taxes as well in terms of HST and that. So there are things that you need to be aware of, and just working with the right professional. This is not to deter you from buying. This is not to deter you until like, oh my God, there's nothing hidden. Like none of it is a hidden cost. It's just whoever you were working with didn't tell you to plan for it. Right. So I want to get away from this calling it hidden, because it's not, right? So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we covered all the myths and misconceptions.
We did, right? I think we did. Yeah. Well, at least for what we can cover in a 25-minute period, so we don't go and go over and just overwhelm you. But there's so much more. There's always so much more. So this is that point at which I tell you to reach out to me personally. Or if you have a professional that you're working with, you want to validate 1 or 2 things, not a problem. Let me know. And just go out there and make better real estate decisions.
That was good.
You guys talk.